Gymnastics is known for its beauty, balance, and brilliance. But behind the flips and medals lies a world of controversy. What really happened at the Sydney vault disaster? Why did Simone Biles step away mid-Olympics? And how did one gymnast lose gold? Over cold medicine? These aren't just mistakes. They're the moments that shook the sport to its core. In this video, we're diving deep into the biggest controversies in gymnastics history. Stories that made headlines, sparked debates, and changed the game forever. Stay with us till the end. Some of these will leave you absolutely speechless. The Larry Nassar abuse scandal. This one shook the entire world of sports, not just gymnastics. For years, Larry Nassar was seen as a trusted doctor, treating elite gymnasts under the official title of team physician. He was in the room for Olympic golds, emotional moments, injuries, but behind closed doors, something far darker was happening. Nassar used his position to abuse hundreds of young athletes under the guise of treatment. The silence broke in 2016 when gymnast Rachel Den Hollander came forward with her story. Her public testimony opened the floodgates. One by one, over 250 women stepped forward, sharing nearly identical experiences of betrayal. The world listened in disbelief. "I thought I was the only one," many of them said, but I wasn't. We weren't. What made this scandal even worse was how long it was allowed to continue. USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University received complaints years before action was taken. And instead of protecting athletes, they often protected their own image. The courtroom moment that stunned the world, when Judge Rosemary Aquilina sentenced Nassar to up to 175 years in prison. "I just signed your death warrant," she said, a line now etched into sports history. That sentence wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Massive reforms in athlete safety, mandatory reporting, and training culture followed. But scars remain. As Simone Biles later said, "We've been failed and we deserve answers." And from a scandal that finally found justice, we jump into a shocking mistake that played out live on the Olympic stage. The 2000 Sydney vault height disaster. This was the day a 5-centimeter mistake changed Olympic history. During the women's all-around final at the Sydney 2000 Olympics, something felt off. Gymnast after gymnast stumbled during their vault routines. Some fell hard, others looked confused mid-air. And then Alana Slater, an Australian gymnast, spoke up. She measured the vault herself and discovered it was set 5 centimeters too low. That tiny difference, a total game changer. For gymnasts who train with precision, even a slight shift in height throws off everything, like speed, rotation, and landing. "The vault felt weird," Slater said, "but we never imagined it could be set wrong." One of the most heartbreaking outcomes? Elena Mukhina, a heavy favorite, suffered a disastrous fall that took her out of the running for all-around gold. The mistake wasn't her fault, but the damage was done. Even after officials raised the vault to the correct height and allowed redos, the psychological toll had already hit. Gymnasts cried backstage. Coaches were furious, and the audience watched in confusion, unaware of the chaos unraveling behind the scenes. The incident sparked international outrage and forced the gymnastics world to rethink its equipment safety checks. Now, vaults are measured multiple times before every major competition, all because of one critical, very public error. And while that was a mistake caught too late, the next moment was no accident. It was a silent, powerful act of protest that echoed around the world. Vera Ć&aac's silent protest, 1968. Some moments don't need words to shake the world. At the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, Czechoslovakian gymnast Vera Ć&aacka was already a star. She had won 3 gold medals in Tokyo 4 years earlier and arrived in Mexico as a living legend. But what happened after she stepped onto the podium would make her a global symbol of silent defiance. In the months leading up to the games, her homeland, Czechoslovakia, had been swept into a political storm. The Prague Spring, a movement calling for liberal reforms and more freedom from Soviet control, was crushed by a sudden military invasion from the Soviet Union. Tanks rolled through Prague, lives were lost, the country was thrown into silence, and fear returned overnight. Vera, like many of her fellow citizens, was devastated. And then came the Olympics and the Soviet anthem. After winning gold in the floor exercise and silver in the all-around, Vera stood on the podium beside Soviet athletes. The Soviet flag rose, the anthem played, and Vera turned her head down and away, refusing to face the flag in protest. She didn't say a word, she didn't make a scene, but that subtle gesture, caught on live TV, was louder than any speech. "I couldn't pretend," she said years later. "I had to show how I felt. The world noticed, so did her government." Back home, Vera paid a steep price. She was blacklisted by the communist regime, labeled a traitor. Her passport was revoked. She wasn't allowed to compete, coach, or travel. For years, she disappeared from the public eye. At one point, she was even forced to work as a janitor, but she never regretted her stand. To me, being able to look in the mirror, that was worth more than any medal, she once said. Her legacy only grew with time. Journalists, historians, and athletes continued to cite her act of courage. It wasn't just about politics, it was about integrity on the biggest stage, at a moment when staying silent would have been easier. In 1989, after the fall of communism, Vera was finally recognized as a national hero in her own country. She later served as an advisor to the president of the Czech Republic and was welcomed back into the global sporting community. The International Olympic Committee honored her for her courage and integrity, calling her one of the most important figures in Olympic history. To this day, her protest is studied, remembered, and admired. It stands alongside moments like the Black Power salute and Muhammad Ali's resistance as one of sport's most profound acts of conscience. And from that silent, powerful gesture, we move into a controversy that wasn't about protest or politics, but about how a single pill cost a gymnast her golden dream. Andrea Raducan's doping controversy. This one broke hearts. At the 2000 Sydney Olympics, Andrea Raducan of Romania delivered the performance of her life. She won gold in the all-around, the ultimate gymnastics title. But just days later, the dream unraveled. A doping test came back positive. Not for steroids, not for anything performance-enhancing, but for a common cold medication, one that had been given to her by her team doctor. She didn't even know it contained a banned substance. The kicker, the investigation found the medication didn't give her any advantage. She didn't cheat. But under the IOC's zero-tolerance policy, intent didn't matter. The medal was taken away. "I did everything right," Andrea said. "I followed the rules, and still they punished me." The public outcry was massive. Even other athletes came to her defense. Many still argue that she deserves her gold back. The case became a symbol of when rules override fairness and how blind policies can hurt innocent athletes. And from a gold medal lost on a technicality, we move into a scandal that questioned the very age of the gymnasts competing. The 2008 Beijing age scandal. It's one of gymnastics' biggest question marks, and it still hasn't been fully answered. During the 2008 Beijing Olympics, China's women's gymnastics team stunned the world with their talent, but not long after the gold medals were awarded, questions started swirling. Were they too young to compete? The minimum age for Olympic gymnasts is 16, but documents surfaced suggesting some team members were as young as 14. Their official passports listed birth dates that didn't match other public records, including past competition results and online registries. The IOC launched an investigation. China provided documentation. Officially, the gymnasts were cleared, but for many, the doubt never went away. "I looked at them and thought, no way," one former coach said anonymously. "They looked like kids." The controversy didn't just target China, it sparked global scrutiny. New calls for biometric age testing came forward, and federations tightened verification policies. But the Beijing scandal remains one of the most debated topics in Olympic history, with a gold medal and possibly the truth still under question. China's 2000 bronze medal revoked. Sometimes the truth takes time, but when it hits, the shock runs deep. 10 years after the 2000 Sydney Olympics, the International Olympic Committee made a bombshell announcement. China would be stripped of their team bronze medal in women's gymnastics. The reason? One of their athletes, Dongfang Xiao, was underage during the competition. The revelation didn't come from an investigation. It came from her own resume. Years later, Dong submitted work documents that listed her true birth year, revealing she had been only 14, not the required 16, during the Sydney Games. That one detail unraveled everything. The IOC rechecked records and confirmed the violation. In 2010, they officially revoked China's medal and awarded it instead to the US women's team, who had originally finished 4th. It was a bittersweet moment. The American gymnasts got their medals, but not the Olympic podium moment they'd earned a decade earlier. What made this even more troubling was what came next. Investigations revealed that over 15,000 athletes within China's sports system had falsified documents over the years, not just in gymnastics, but in multiple sports. It wasn't just one athlete, one official said. It was a systemic problem, and this scandal didn't just change the record books. It forced international sports bodies to revisit how they verify athlete eligibility. Now, stricter checks, digital records, and third-party validations are part of the process. And from a medal lost a decade too late, we now turn to a moment where a US medal was taken away. Not because of paperwork, but because of a technicality. USA's lost medal in 1988 Seoul. It was the kind of moment that leaves athletes stunned. Not from a fall, not from a poor performance, but from a rule. At the 1988 Seoul Olympics, the US women's gymnastics team was poised to take home the bronze. They had finished their routines, they had the scores. It should have been locked in. But then something happened during the awards ceremony that changed everything. One American gymnast, out of pure joy and excitement, stepped onto the podium before the competition had officially concluded. Another gymnast from another country was still finishing her final routine. That single step was seen as a violation of protocol. The judges called it unsportsmanlike behavior, and the US team was disqualified from the bronze medal position. "I didn't mean anything by it," the gymnast later said. "We thought it was over. I was just celebrating." Many called it a harsh punishment for a harmless mistake. Others argued rules were rules, but no matter how it was viewed, the result stayed. The medal was gone. The team, stunned, walked away empty-handed, not because of performance, but because of a misunderstood moment. From a rule that shocked a nation to a decision that divided the world, we moved next to a controversy that had the whole planet watching one gymnast's every move. Simone Biles' withdrawal from Tokyo 2020. When Simone Biles, the most decorated gymnast of her generation, stepped back from the Tokyo Olympics, it sent shockwaves far beyond the world of sports. It was supposed to be her crowning moment. Instead, after a shaky vault during team finals, she stunned the world by withdrawing mid-competition, citing mental health concerns and a dangerous condition known as the twisties, where a gymnast loses spatial awareness mid-air. "I have to do what's right for me," Biles said. "It's more than gymnastics." The response? Divided. Many hailed her bravery, saying it was about time athletes prioritized their well-being. Others accused her of abandoning her team. The world debated, argued, and posted their takes online. But inside the Olympic bubble, something rare happened. Solidarity. Fellow gymnasts from other nations rallied behind her. Even rivals showed support. Biles returned days later for the beam finals. A routine less demanding, more controlled. She won bronze. But that medal wasn't the story. It was the statement. Mental health matters. "I'm more than my medals," she said. Her decision didn't just change the conversation. It rewrote what strength looks like in sport. From personal courage to institutional problems, we now head to the place where many of these issues quietly started. The Karolyi Ranch culture of fear. For years, the Karolyi Ranch in Texas was seen as the center of American gymnastics greatness, the place where Olympic dreams were built. But behind the medals and media coverage, athletes say it was a place filled with fear. Originally run by coaches Bella and Marta Karolyi, the ranch became the official training site for the US national team. Athletes would live and train there in seclusion. They were weighed regularly, monitored constantly, and, according to many, berated for mistakes, isolated for injuries, and made to feel like tools instead of teenagers. "I was scared every time I went there," one gymnast said. "It didn't feel like a camp. It felt like a prison." It became worse when the Nassar abuse revelations came to light. Many survivors reported that incidents took place at the ranch itself, where there were no parents, no oversight, and no escape. Eventually, the ranch was shut down. USA Gymnastics cut ties with the Karolyis, and the facility was abandoned. The ranch, once a symbol of discipline and dominance, now serves as a reminder of what happens when control becomes cruelty, and silence becomes system. And now, from a facility that broke spirits, we turn to the fall that ended a promising career far too soon. Elena Mukhina's career-ending fall, 1980. Sometimes, the pressure to be perfect ends in tragedy. In the lead-up to the 1980 Moscow Olympics, Soviet gymnast Elena Mukhina was being hailed as the next big thing, a rising star. But behind the scenes, she was being pushed past her limits, specifically to perform the Thomas Salto, a move so dangerous it has since been banned. Elena knew she wasn't ready. She had a fractured leg. She begged her coaches to delay training. "I said I wasn't ready," she later revealed, but they didn't listen. Then came the fall. During a training session, Mukhina attempted the salto, lost control, and landed on her neck. The injury left her paralyzed for life at just 20 years old. "They broke me like a doll," she said. That haunting quote still echoes in gymnastics halls to this day. Her accident forced the sport to re-examine how far is too far. It raised red flags about athlete safety, coaching pressure, and the risks of prioritizing gold over lives. Mukhina passed away in 2006, but her story remains one of the darkest and most important reminders in gymnastics history. If gymnastics had a blacklist, North Korea would be near the top. For years, the country's athletes raised eyebrows, not just for their incredible skill, but for something much harder to measure: their birthdays, their age, and more importantly, the truth behind it. Reports and documents began surfacing showing North Korean gymnasts entering international competitions under different names, different dates of birth, and even completely altered identities. The inconsistencies weren't minor. Some athletes appeared 2 or 3 years younger depending on what competition they were in. It wasn't random, it was strategic manipulation, often used to bypass eligibility rules. In 2010, the case that shattered the silence came to light. Gymnast Hong-soo Jung was found to have competed under 3 different birth years across major international events. It was one of the clearest examples of systemic forgery in modern gymnastics history. That discovery prompted an investigation from the International Gymnastics Federation, FIG, and what they found was deeply troubling. Hong's documents had been tampered with repeatedly, and there was evidence that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern within the North Korean sports system. In response, FIG made a move that stunned the community. They suspended North Korea's entire gymnastics federation in 2014. That meant no athletes, no coaches, and no officials could take part in any international event under the North Korean banner. "Enough is enough," one FIG executive said. "This isn't a paperwork error. This is a coordinated effort to cheat the system." But why go to such lengths? In North Korea, sports success is national propaganda. Athletes who win medals are celebrated not just as individuals, but as symbols of regime strength. That kind of pressure created a system where deception was normalized, where athletes were used like pawns, reshaped to fit whatever age, category, or requirement was needed for the country's advantage. Former coaches and defectors have since confirmed that age falsification was common, not only in gymnastics but in diving, figure skating, and even soccer. Sometimes birth records were rewritten entirely. One athlete recalled being told to memorize a new birth date by heart, under threat of losing the chance to compete at all. The fallout was huge. While the suspension was eventually lifted after years of investigation and reform promises, the trust never fully returned. North Korean athletes, when they do appear at international competitions now, are watched closely. Every ID checked, every form double verified. But the saddest part, the athletes themselves. Many trained for years, some since childhood, only to be caught in a scandal they never controlled. When the truth came out, their careers vanished, and in many cases, so did they. From a web of false identities to a scoring scandal that left athletes and fans fuming, we jumped straight into another controversy that made gymnasts question the fairness of their scores. The 2019 Pan Am Games score-fixing scandal. Judging controversies aren't new in gymnastics, but this one had athletes filing formal protests. At the 2019 Pan American Games in Lima, Peru, whispers started circulating before the podiums were even finalized. Scores didn't add up. Some athletes from the host nation appeared to receive unusually high marks, while others, particularly from visiting countries, seemed underrated. It didn't take long before accusations of score manipulation began to surface. Several national federations, including Canada and Brazil, filed official petitions challenging the final results. Something felt off. One coach said, "It didn't match what we saw on the floor." An oversight panel was called in to review the scoring system, but the investigation was inconclusive. There wasn't enough evidence to overturn results, but plenty of suspicion remained. The controversy added fuel to a long-standing debate in gymnastics. Should judging be fully digitized and transparent? Should scores be reviewed in real time with video playback and computer verification? For many, this scandal was a breaking point. Calls for electronic scoring systems and independent judging panels gained momentum, with athletes demanding that the sport evolve. And as debates over fairness raged on, the next controversy proved that sometimes the biggest challenges come not from judges, but from the world outside the gym. COVID-19 and the 2020 Tokyo quarantine clash. The Tokyo Olympics were unlike any before. And gymnastics didn't escape the chaos. In 2020, COVID-19 forced the Olympics to postpone by a year. When the games finally happened in 2021, the athletes arrived in a world of bubble protocols, empty stands, and strict quarantine rules. For gymnasts, that meant limited practice time, daily testing, and virtually no in-person coaching. The biggest issue? Unequal treatment. Some countries reported having better access to training facilities, more flexible movement inside the Olympic Village, or even longer warm-ups. Others, including Team USA, said they were heavily restricted, often practicing alone in silent rooms, or missing time due to contact tracing. It didn't feel like the Olympics, one gymnast said. It felt like survival. Mental health became a growing concern. Isolated, stressed, and disconnected from their usual support systems, many athletes began to speak out. Some withdrew at the last minute due to positive tests or last-second exposures, reshaping lineups and medal projections in real time. The quarantine clash wasn't about scores or performances. It was about how uneven the playing field had become. In a sport that demands structure, the pandemic turned everything upside down. And as the games unfolded in eerie silence, another storm was brewing. Not in the arena, but online. The internet fueled Simone Biles' backlash. Simone Biles didn't just step back from competition in Tokyo, she stepped into the center of a cultural firestorm. After withdrawing from the team final due to mental health concerns and twisties, Biles received waves of support, but she also faced a tidal wave of online hate. Social media turned toxic, strangers accused her of being weak, dramatic, even unpatriotic. She quit, some said, she abandoned her team. But others, athletes, coaches, celebrities, pushed back just as hard. She did what champions do, said tennis star Naomi Osaka. She protected herself. Through it all, Biles stayed calm. She explained her condition. She posted updates. She recentered the conversation around mental health and how the pressure of global expectation can twist even the strongest minds. Sponsors didn't walk away. They stood by her. Athletes around the world echoed her message. And when she returned for the beam finals, she did it with grace, finishing third and proving that medals aren't the only measure of greatness. But the backlash left a scar, a loud reminder that in the age of likes and retweets, athletes are human first, and that kindness online matters just as much as sportsmanship on the mat. And that's the wild, eye-opening truth behind gymnastics' biggest scandals. If this video made you think, or even shocked you, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and make sure to subscribe for more untold stories in sports. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.